What would you do if your own brother treated you like free childcare? Imagine, it's Christmas morning, you're sipping cocoa, and he pulls out his planner, not to wish you joy, but to schedule how you'll raise his kids while he cruises the Bahamas. My name is Daphne, and after years of being the family babysitter, I finally said no. What followed? The sweetest revenge I've ever tasted. If you've ever been taken for granted by your own family, smash that like button and subscribe. Because today, you're about to hear how one underestimated sister turned years of unpaid labor into a holiday payback no one in my family will ever forget. If I had to sum up my family role in a single sentence, it would be this: I was the built-in babysitter nobody ever bothered to thank. It started small. I was 16 the first time my brother, Patrick, dumped his kids on me. He was 24 then, already married with 2 toddlers. My parents beamed at him like he was some kind of saint for settling down young, while I was the afterthought, the quiet younger sister who just happened to be convenient. Daphne can watch them, right? Patrick had said one summer afternoon, like he was ordering takeout. I opened my mouth to protest, but my mom cut in with, "Of course she can, she's great with the kids." And just like that, I was drafted. At first, I thought it would be temporary, help out for a weekend, show I'm responsible, maybe earn a little respect. But respect never came. What did come were years of last-minute calls, guilt trips, and "your family, it's what you do" speeches. By college, it was routine. Friday night? Babysit. Spring break? Babysit. A cousin's wedding where I actually wanted to dance? Babysit, in the hotel room with the kids while Patrick and his wife drank champagne downstairs. I became invisible. The dependable ghost that made everyone else's fun possible. And here's the thing, nobody ever said thank you. Not once. Fast forward to this past Christmas. I'm 28 now, single, working full-time as a project coordinator. I'd been looking forward to one peaceful holiday in my apartment, lights strung across the balcony, a tree glittering in the corner, cinnamon candles burning. For once, I wasn't hosting, wasn't running errands, wasn't playing third parent. I wanted stillness. But of course, Patrick had other plans. The living room at my parents' house was a Norman Rockwell painting brought to life. Pine needles on the carpet, wrapping paper flying, the smell of roasted ham drifting in from the kitchen. My nieces squealed with delight over new dolls, my parents sipped cider, and for a moment, it almost felt normal. Then Patrick cleared his throat. He set down his mug, reached into his bag, and pulled out, no exaggeration, a leather-bound planner. I felt my chest tighten. He flipped it open like Santa checking a naughty list. "Okay, Daphne," he began casually, "so our cruise leaves January 10th. We'll be gone 2 weeks, and the kids will obviously need someone stable, so I went ahead and penciled you in." He didn't ask. He didn't even look up. He just wrote my name across 2 full weeks of his calendar like I was a houseplant sitter, not a human being with a life. I froze. The room buzzed with torn wrapping paper, laughter, and clinking glasses, but for me, time stopped. My mind screamed, "Is he serious?" Then he glanced at me, eyebrow raised. "You're good with that, right?" My stomach nodded. My parents beamed proudly, like Patrick had just solved world hunger. Mom chimed in, "Oh, that's perfect, Daphne. You'll keep them in their routine." And that was it. No discussion, no consideration. My Christmas gift was apparently 2 weeks of unpaid labor. I don't know what shifted inside me that day. Maybe it was the smug look on Patrick's face, or the way his wife scrolled through her phone, already planning spa appointments for their cruise. Maybe it was the fact that I had plans of my own, my company's January project launch, long hours that would decide whether I got promoted. But something in me snapped. For years, I had swallowed the guilt trips. For years, I had convinced myself it was easier to just say yes. But as I stared at his neat little handwriting blocking off my January, a different thought hit me: what if I say no? My heart thudded. My palms went clammy. But my voice, shaky at first, found its edge. Actually, Patrick. I'm not available. The room fell silent. My dad coughed into his cider. My mom blinked like I'd spoken another language. Patrick's pen hovered mid-scribble. "Excuse me," he said, with the incredulous tone of a man who'd never heard the word no. I cleared my throat. "I'm working. Big project launch. I can't take 2 weeks off to babysit. You'll need to make other arrangements." The silence deepened, heavy and electric. My mom's lips parted, ready to scold. Patrick's wife finally looked up, eyes narrowed like I'd just insulted her personally. Patrick leaned back, planner still open, and let out a laugh. Short. Disbelieving. "You're kidding." I met his gaze. For once, I didn't look away. "No. I'm serious." The guilt train left the station immediately. "Mom, Daphne, don't be selfish. It's just 2 weeks. Patrick's wife, we can't cancel our cruise. We've been planning this all year. Dad, you've always been so dependable." Every word was a dagger. Dependable. Selfish. Always. I wanted to shrink. My throat burned. But under the fear was something else, rage. Years of being used, minimized, brushed aside, it all crystallized into one hot, steady flame. So I did what terrified me most. I doubled down. "I'm not changing my mind," I said, "Boys steady now. Find a nanny. Ask your in-laws. Pay for a sitter. But I'm done being your free childcare." Patrick's jaw tightened. His planner snapped shut like a gavel slamming down. He muttered something under his breath, but I caught it, ungrateful. Ungrateful. The word echoed in my head long after dinner ended, long after I drove home and curled up by my own Christmas tree. Ungrateful, for refusing to be exploited. That's when I realized, this wasn't just about babysitting. This was about power. For years, Patrick had controlled me with obligation. He assumed I'd keep bending, keep breaking, keep giving. But now? The spell was broken. And if he thought he could guilt me into caving, he was in for a rude awakening. My phone buzzed nonstop for the next 3 days after Christmas. At first it was my mom, leaving me long voicemails about family responsibility and how Patrick had already paid for the cruise. Then Patrick himself chimed in, his voice tight, calling me selfish, telling me I was ruining his marriage because his wife needed a break and I was too bitter to help. Each word was a mix of guilt and insult, designed to wear me down. But instead of folding, I felt stronger. Every time I replayed the planner scene in my head, the smug certainty in Patrick's eyes, the way he penciled me into his calendar like I was a babysitting app, my anger hardened into resolve. I wasn't going to cave. Not this time. So when he finally showed up at my apartment one night, standing in the hallway with his arms crossed and that superior smirk plastered on his face, I didn't flinch. "Daphne," he started, not even bothering to greet me, "you can stop this little stunt now. The kids love you. You'll watch them. End of discussion." I leaned on the doorframe and let him finish his monologue. The old me would have argued, begged, or tried to justify myself. But I'd learned something. Patrick didn't respect explanations. He only respected consequences. So I said calmly, "No, Patrick. End of discussion." And I shut the door in his face. The silence on the other side was almost comical. He knocked again, more aggressive, but I ignored it. After a few minutes he stormed off, muttering. For the first time in years, I felt a thrill of power surge through me. My hands were shaking, but my chest felt light, like I'd taken a full breath after years of holding it. Of course, Patrick wasn't going to let it go that easily. He started a smear campaign with the family group chat. Screenshots popped up on my phone, him writing that I'd turned cold, that I was abandoning my nieces and nephews, that I was jealous of his successful life. Some relatives chimed in with sad face emojis or vague guilt comments like, "Family is everything." I stayed quiet. Let him stew. Then came the turning point, a desperate call from his wife, 2 weeks before the cruise. Her voice was shrill, panicked. "Daphne, you don't understand, we can't find anyone. All the nannies are booked, and my mom has her surgery that week. We'll lose all our money if we cancel. Please, you're the only one we trust." That single word, trust, made me laugh bitterly after I hung up. Trust me to sacrifice my own career, my own peace, my own identity, so they could sip cocktails on a ship. They hadn't trusted me enough to ask. They had ordered me. And now? They wanted me to swoop in as their savior again. That's when the idea sparked. Not just to say no, but to let them walk straight into the consequences of their entitlement. I messaged back, polite as sugar, "Sorry, I really can't. Good luck finding someone." The day of their cruise arrived. My phone lit up with frantic messages that morning. They had no sitter. They were arguing at the airport. My mom sent me a teary voicemail saying, "Your brother's marriage is on the rocks, and you could fix it with one simple yes." I turned off my phone, set it on silent, and walked into my office for the biggest project meeting of my career. My boss praised my presentation, the client shook my hand, and that evening, my manager pulled me aside. "You've been killing it. We're considering you for team lead." My heart nearly burst. Meanwhile, Patrick was unraveling. His cruise? Cancelled. The non-refundable deposit? Lost. His wife was furious, threatening to take the kids to her mother's permanently because, as she screamed at him according to my mom, "You treat everyone like employees, even your own sister." For once, the chaos wasn't mine to fix. It was his. And when I saw him weeks later, he wouldn't even meet my eyes. The planner was gone, replaced with a man who finally realized I wasn't his safety net anymore. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger beyond saying one tiny, powerful word, no. The weeks after the cruise fiasco were strangely quiet, almost unnervingly so. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't vibrating with last-minute babysitting demands. No texts that started with, "Hey, can you just," no voicemails from Patrick outlining his schedule as if I were his employee. Silence. And in that silence, I discovered something I'd been craving without realizing it, peace. I went to the gym after work without worrying about who needed dinner at my brother's house. I spent lazy Sundays curled up with a book instead of running after kids I hadn't chosen to raise. I even took a weekend trip with friends, something unthinkable before, because I was always on call. It felt like a new life had opened in front of me, and all it took was one word, no. But peace wasn't the only thing I noticed. My parents, who had once joined in every guilt trip, now spoke to me with this cautious respect. At first it was subtle, fewer comments about how Patrick has so much on his plate and more questions about how my job was going. My mom even asked if I could show her the slides from the presentation that landed me the promotion. I caught a flicker of pride in her eyes, pride I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Patrick, on the other hand, looked like a man nursing a bruised ego. At family dinners, he avoided me. He'd sit at the far end of the table, fiddling with his phone while his wife sulked beside him. The tension was thick, but I didn't mind. For once, it wasn't me holding the weight of the family's comfort on my shoulders. What really sealed the shift, though, was what happened one Saturday afternoon when Patrick's oldest daughter, Lily, tugged on my sleeve. She's 11 now, old enough to notice things. She leaned in and whispered, "Thank you for saying no." I blinked at her, confused. She gave me this shy, conspiratorial smile. "Dad and Mom fight less now. He has to pick us up from school sometimes, and I like it when he's there. He never used to come." Her words hit me like a lightning bolt. In all my years of babysitting, I'd told myself I was doing it for the kids, that they needed me, that I was protecting them. But the truth was, by constantly rescuing Patrick, I'd been enabling him to check out of fatherhood. Saying no hadn't just freed me, it had forced him to show up for his own children. I hugged Lily and felt tears sting my eyes. In that moment, every doubt, every pang of guilt I'd carried melted away. I wasn't abandoning my nieces and nephews. I was giving them back their dad. A week later, Patrick finally spoke to me. We were at my parents' house again, and after dinner he lingered in the kitchen while I washed a few dishes. His voice was low, stripped of the arrogance I'd come to expect. "Daphne, I didn't realize how much I leaned on you. I shouldn't have assumed." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest he'd ever come. I glanced at him, searching his face for sarcasm, but for once, he looked genuine. "Tired. Even human." I nodded. "You have a family, Patrick. They need you more than they need me." He didn't argue. He just nodded back and left the room. Driving home that night, I rolled the window down, letting the cool air fill my car. For years I'd been carrying a weight that was never mine to hold. And now, finally, it was off my shoulders. I wasn't the family babysitter anymore. I was just Daphne. And for the first time, that felt like enough. When spring rolled around, the change in family dynamics became impossible to ignore. Easter dinner had always been another one of those events where I was expected to be part guest, part unpaid help. In the past, Patrick's kids would have been dropped at my side the moment I walked in the door, their parents free to socialize and sip wine while I kept them entertained. But this time was different. I watched as Patrick bent down to tie his youngest's shoes, then carried a tray of food to the kids' table himself. His wife hovered awkwardly, clearly unused to doing the hands-on work, but she helped too. I sat on the couch, plate in my lap, and for once I wasn't exhausted before dessert even hit the table. The rest of the family noticed too. My aunt leaned over to me and whispered, "Looks like Patrick finally learned how to be a dad." There was a wry smile on her face, one that told me she'd been silently watching all these years, maybe judging him, maybe pitying me. Either way, it was satisfying to know I wasn't crazy, that others had seen the imbalance too. The whispers grew louder over time. Cousins, grandparents, even family friends began to comment on how involved Patrick suddenly was. They praised him like he'd reinvented fatherhood, but I didn't correct them. I just let it happen, because deep down I knew the truth. It wasn't a sudden burst of responsibility, it was necessity. He had no backup anymore. He had to step up because I'd stopped cushioning his life. At work, my own life was flourishing. My promotion to team lead gave me a confidence I'd never felt before. I managed deadlines, presented in meetings, and earned the respect of my colleagues in ways Patrick had never given me credit for. Each success was another layer of armor, protecting me from the old guilt they'd once used to keep me in place. The true climax came in June, when Patrick's wife threw a small birthday party for their middle child. Normally, these gatherings had been my personal trap, me in the corner, corralling kids while the parents laughed with their friends. But this time, Patrick was the one juggling cake slices, wiping sticky hands, and breaking up sibling squabbles. I sat across the room, chatting with a coworker I'd invited as my guest, and watched as Patrick's eyes met mine from across the chaos. For the briefest second, I saw it, a flash of recognition. That he was living the life he'd once shoved onto me. That the responsibility had always been his, not mine. There was no smugness in his look now, no planner dictating my time. Just the tired, slightly sheepish gaze of a man who knew he'd been wrong. He didn't say it out loud, but he didn't need to. His kids clung to his legs that afternoon, laughing and squealing, and for the first time I saw them bond in a way they'd missed for years. My revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It wasn't about embarrassing him or getting even in front of the whole family. It was about drawing a line so firm that the balance of our family finally shifted. Driving home that evening, I realized revenge doesn't always come with fireworks or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just watching the person who underestimated you finally carry the weight they tried to dump on you. And in those quiet victories, you find the deepest satisfaction of all. By late summer, it was almost comical how the tables had turned. Patrick, once the master of delegating his life, was now the one juggling carpools, lunchboxes, and school projects. I'd overhear him complain to my parents about how exhausting it was, how kids never stop needing something. My mom would nod sympathetically, but I caught the faintest flicker of guilt in her eyes when she glanced at me. Maybe she was finally realizing how much I had carried for all those years. Then came the true test. One Friday evening, Patrick called me, not with demands, but with a question. His voice was cautious, almost humble. "Daphne, would you be able to watch the kids just for a few hours tomorrow night? I'll pay you, of course. I really need a break." For a moment, I almost laughed. It wasn't the request itself, it was the fact that he finally asked like I was a person, not a doormat. He even offered payment, something he'd never done in over a decade of using me. This was the moment I had waited for, not revenge in the form of cruelty, but revenge in the form of recognition. He had learned. He had been humbled. I agreed, but on my terms. "Sure, Patrick. I can do it from 6 to 10. But after that, I've got plans." And when I showed up, I didn't play the frazzled, overworked babysitter of the past. I was calm, collected, confident. I watched the kids, they were sweet, and when Patrick and his wife returned, he handed me cash without hesitation. "Thank you," he said simply. Those 2 words, "thank you," meant more than the bills he pressed into my hand. They meant he finally understood. Word spread quickly through the family grapevine. My mom, once my biggest critic, now bragged about my promotion at work. My dad started asking me for advice on his own projects. The narrative had shifted, I was no longer the background character propping up Patrick's perfect life. I was Daphne, the woman who had drawn a line, stood her ground, and earned respect. The most surprising shift came from the kids themselves. They didn't cling to me out of habit anymore. Instead, they ran to their dad first. Watching them hug him tightly, seeing their bond grow stronger, filled me with a bittersweet pride. My quiet rebellion hadn't just changed my life, it had changed theirs too. Looking back, I realized the sweetest revenge wasn't about watching Patrick fail. It was about forcing him to step into his role, and in doing so, reclaiming my own freedom. I had given him no dramatic speech, no explosive confrontation. Just a steady, unshakable no, and that word reshaped the entire balance of our family. Sometimes revenge isn't fire and fury, it's quiet strength. It's knowing when to stop carrying burdens that were never yours, and letting the people who underestimated you finally feel the weight themselves. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and subscribe for more powerful revenge stories. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up to family when they took you for granted? I'd love to hear your story.